Hello and welcome back to episode 22 of Heroic Stats, an Any Heroics podcast. My name is Stephen Denby and I'm the 2024 GBHL Rankings Officer and Captain of Any Heroics, where we choose our captain based on their ability to transfer their consciousness to another host's body. This week I'm joined by Mr. David Farmer and guest Mr. Jakob Krochmal. Say hello everyone.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. He did the thing. He did the thing that he doesn't like.
So, as you'll notice, I am in fact not Stephen Denby. I'm the hard-working, hard-grafting intern. We've upgraded Stephen into Jakob, and based on this weekend's past performance, that probably is quite an upgrade. What did we get up to this weekend, Dave?
We've been in Antwerp, all of us. Some of us for England, some of us for another team, Team Lions. Because as you can probably tell from his accent, Jakob here is as English as they come.
Yeah.
Citation needed. But no, it was great. It was we were there for the Nations Cup, which is a team tournament. We've been talking about it for a couple of weeks at this point. So if you've not figured out what that is yet, the last couple of episodes go into it in some detail as well. But
this is the last episode about the Nations Cup until next year, I promise. But before we talk about it in more detail, let's have a word from Stephen Denby plugging our sponsors.
Yeah, so Seven City Collectibles is one of the largest stockists of all your hobby gaming stuff. So whether that's minis, cards, paints, sceneries, anything else. Importantly, not only do they sell first-hand goods, they also buy and sell second-hand armies. Have you got stuff gathering dust in cupboards? I know I do at my parents' at home. I'm going to be taking it to Seven City Collectibles and getting a good rate on some nice store credit, which you actually get a preferential rate for. Whereas if you just sell it for cash, you don't get quite as much, which encourages you to spend more money in the hobby, which is what we're all here for. They do, of course, do fabulous food as well. As it's also a good place to hang out, play games. If you're ever in the Nottingham area, go check them out. You might see this lovely gentleman
we've
there.
ever been.
This is the most sponsored we've ever been. This is extra sponsored.
You've got to sponsor the shit out of it.
Right, Will, have you been sufficiently rimmed yet?
I'm just absolutely in awe.
Thank you for the word, Stephen. Let's move on to the Nations Cup. So, of course, this was the premier team tournament of the year. 15 nations across 20 teams battling it out. It was six-person teams, with 3 good lists, 3 evil lists, with a draft to kind of pair my good into your evil into my good lists. So there's a lot of tactical stuff with the draft. But of course, like any tournament, there was some other awards outside of purely gaming. Most sporting was won by Team USA.
God bless America, as they say. Yeah. It's important to mention that sporting, I think, it's essentially the team that got the highest score over the course of every single game. So as part of every game, we would rate our opposition between a 1 and a 5. 1 being a problem game that you need to explain why you give them a 1 to the TOs, and 5 being actually just a really fun game, a great game. No need to justify why you had such a good time. It's just if you want to tell the TOs that you had a horrible time, you have to explain it. So this means that over the course of, how many games would it be? 36 games.
Yeah.
The US got the highest score. So well done to them.
Yeah. And shout out to Canada and Denmark as well, who I think came on the most sporting podium.
No,
Is that right?
Ireland.
Ireland, apologies.
Yeah. And Pipewood Smokers.
And
exactly.
I just fucked that up. Maybe I'll edit that out. Who knows?
Was Pipewood Smokers actually a Polish third team, Jakob, or was it?
So Pipewood Smokers were emergency response team, comprised of 4 Poles, David Nixon, and a German guy whose name I don't remember.
Philip. I played him in one of our rounds. He was lovely.
Yes, the guy with a sword.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I assumed they were Polish because their shirts had a Polish flag on the back. Well, a lot of them did. I don't know if they all had polished flags or if it was
Not all of them. David Nixon had some English heraldry, and
I didn't actually catch that.
That's quite cool. Yeah. Well, do you want to introduce us to the most important award given out of the weekend, Dave?
I don't know what you mean. Could you talk about the painting award, the English clean sweep?
It was a complete English clean sweep, and in third place, I think picking up. Is this your first painting award, Mr. Farmer?
It's my first.
He, of course,
it says a third place. A very blurry photo here with my Rangers of Lothlorien that I did not actually. I didn't actually play with. This is our fourth list. Part of the format was we had 8 lists. I remember talking about this in previous format, but I didn't end up playing with it as a last minute decision change. But I just still brought it along because I felt like I wanted to show it off after painting it all right up till the wire. So I think this felt very vindicating as a reasoning for doing that. You can see I've got my Minister banner and my Faramir conversion in there, which may have featured on the podcast before. I can't remember. I think I talked about it.
Yeah, I remember you talked about it when you were building it.
Yeah. So I mean, I was very, very happy with that. I mean, it's never happened before. I mean, I think I'm quite fortunate that Jakob didn't enter his Last Alliance army because that is also a best painted winner, and I think nicer looking than mine. So I think we dodged. I snatched a podium position there with this, but yeah, I'm very happy with it.
Can you confirm, Dave, whether you are just a hobbyist?
I'm not just a hobbyist. I'm a multi-talented individual, and I aspire to be like my idol, Jakob Crockmall.
I didn't know the English bias is so strong, so I thought there will be plenty of Louis Van Hecks out there who are going to snatch all the prizes.
Well, I mean, Louis Van Heck, the grand Louis Van Heck, was not competing in the painting competition this year, despite several of his armies being lent out to various people and looking absolutely gorgeous on the battlefield. Multiple Belgians were rocking Louis Van Heck original armies. But he was one of the three painting judges. This wasn't voted for by everybody. This was a judge's decision, so that makes it feel a little more special, I think, rather than just being a pleasing army to look at. It's also someone who's a great painter, such as Louis, has given it something of a thumbs up, or at least 1/3 of a thumbs up. Anyway, let's see the second place army.
We skip over second place. Some nobody who lucked out and picked up yet another painting award.
A surprising photo without without display board, but obviously here it is.
You know me, Jakob. Well, if Louis did tell me that he was gonna not take my display board into account, which I was very.
I mean, clearly they've moved the armies onto some other piece of terrain to take photos of them, which I think is pretty cool. I didn't know that they did that. So very nice.
I'm particularly pleased with the face on the warg there. That looks really cool.
I think you've sensibly allocated your time on the most intricate pieces of painting to the nicest parts of them, the nicest models with the most interesting features. So well done with that.
Is that a little very nice looking army, Dave?
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you have a high base level, but you focus all your very nice paying attention to the bits of the model that are the bits of the army that are the most eye-catching, that's just creates the best effect.
I have to say I had great time killing those orcs in our game.
Yeah. Well, as you so kindly told me, Jakob, that was due to my own tactical errors. Maybe one day I'll learn. Maybe you could take me under your wing as like a little protege. Get me good.
How many did you have any bows, John? Are those orc archers?
3 whole bows, baby. I elected not to take on Jakob in the shooting war.
They didn't even shoot me, and they could have done something, but they didn't.
Did you get any kills with them all weekend?
I honestly am not sure if I shot them all weekend.
All right then.
Considering so a brief rundown of my games. I played Rivendell Knights, so I wasn't worth shooting them. I played 2 Minas Tirith with what they called bolt throwers and trebuchets, so I wasn't going to win that shooting war. I played 68 model Lake Town, wasn't going to win that shooting war. Well, and then Jakob's blinding light.
Well, I didn't use it.
Well, I don't think 3 orcs is ever going to win a shooting war. You know, it's not about having a shooting war. It's about shooting at like hero horses or whatever.
Yeah, I think with being less tongue-in-cheek, a lot of my games I spent trying to either hide out of line of sight or just marching to get close. And I think a big thing with evil armies is, especially shitty orcs hitting on 5s, they're orcs with picks first who happen to have bows. And it may well have been better just to not bother taking the bows at all. But.
I take one of my main build of Kira Thungal at 600 points. I have 2 bows just because I converted 2 orcs to have nice bows and arrows and stuff. So I thought, fuck it, I'll use them. And just always just remembering to shoot them occasionally at like a Boromir horse through 2 in the ways in combat, because you just know that the less likely it is to happen, the more upsetting it is when it actually does happen. So, you know, just your 2 shots all game taking out Boromir's horse is just it's just chef's kiss. So you got to remember to try, even if it fails.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's have a look at whichever glorious army defeated yours.
You spoke about nice conversions. I think this fantastic army from Christian Lewis, with every single model heavily converted, all themed around the British Battle of Agincourt, is incredible. And it's also it's 60 models that he's converted, so it's not like a elite Beornings army.
Yeah, no, it's very, very, very cool. So he's got converted Warriors of Dale to make his Rangers with the Citadel Guard helmets. He's got Fountain Court Guard have the Swan Knight helmets to differentiate them from the Men at Arms, which are Warriors of Minas Tirith, that have custom 3D printed shields that are sort of quartered English lines with Minas Tirith trees, which is super cool. Yeah, and those are converted out of what they called Lake Town Guards, because they have the right kind of hat, which have all been sort of converted as well. It's all very, very clever, very cool, and fabulous piece of work.
It's genuinely hard to see from this photo, which is a compliment, but the entire army is non-metallic metal. If you look closely, you can tell, but on like a brief glance, it looks like metal.
The gold on the edges of the shields is really, really well done.
Yeah,
I think doing that. And I really love the way he did the Rangers. There's a couple of actual Rangers like heroes in there, and their sort of cream surcoat with brown cloaks is just wonderful, with the little English cross on it as well. That's just extremely nice. It's a fantastic hobby project. I enjoyed greatly completely destroying him in the final game.
Well, this is one of the reasons I didn't even bother entering mine into painting competition, because obviously I couldn't win against this, and it's winning or not winning, second or third.
Yeah, a trophy. That's a pain.
No, don't take it badly, Dave. Your army you didn't use was still very nice.
I mean, you already beaten my Angmar at the last painting competition you entered, Jakob, so you could have walked away with second.
That army has almost won tournaments. I mean, you've got a couple of podiums with it. You've got a best painted with it. You've got a best sporting using that army. As soon as you win 100 using that Rivendell army, Last Light army, you'll have literally done all 3 with one army, which is very cool.
That's the plan.
Cool. That is the plan.
I just hope not all GBHL 100s are 700 points.
So if I win 100 with Vanquishers, I'll beat Jakob to that accolade.
You will have done it's a race then, isn't it? Who can re-win 100 faster at 800 points?
It's on, Jakob. It's on.
I think I know who I'd bet on with that, but I won't spoil who it would be.
Yeah, I'll put all of my GME stonks on Jakob, Dave. Right. Enough waffling about hobby. We aren't a hobby podcast, so we look at some podiums. So our third place team at the inaugural Nations Cup was the Germans. They brought Angmar, Dragon Emperor, Mordor, Spider Queen for their evil lists, and for good they had Iron Hills, Thranduil's Halls, and Survivors of Lake Town. all in one list. So Battle of Five Armies. Then they had Misty Mountains, Lothlorien Shire, Yellow Alliance, and finally Defenders of Helm's Deep. We're not going to look at these lists actually in detail, but a few quirks,
a lot of lists to fly over.
Otherwise it would be 18 lists. I know that Angmar, am I right in thinking you said earlier, Dave, it had 10 or more Deadmar Spectres?
It had 10 Spectres in it, yeah, which is an interesting choice. And I was trying to sort of break down why. And I think, other than the fact that Spectres obviously, it was a shade as well. So other than the fact that Spectres obviously have the Felllight is in them rule, which means that you can, when you move first, that army actually has a great deal of ability to make spears and banners run off and whatnot. If you don't have good courage, that's a pretty scary thing to look against, because you can make absolute chaos happen with that many Spectres. But also, the other thing was, with a shade, the battle line, they have Blades of the Dead and they have Courage 6. So if you're facing a terror-causing good side, so for example a Kurdan with or a Dismay up or a Thranduil or something like that, you can still charge because you've got Courage 6 front line, which is crazy and evil. And then also your Blades of the Dead mean that you get to wound things slightly better than you normally would. If you were needing 6s, you'd only need, most things are Courage 5 or lower in good. I mean, Elves obviously Courage 5 or 6.
Yeah, like if you get paired up against Iron Hills, you're wounding on 4s.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be wounding them on 4s, which is an interesting choice. I think the problem obviously is that Spectres are 15 points each, but I do think it's a curious choice, and obviously it's done reasonably well for them. So yeah, it's cool. Am I right in thinking the Iron Hills? So that wasn't actually Iron Hills, was it? It was Erebor Reclaimed with Thorin.
No, it was Iron Hills with Dane, I believe.
Oh, was it?
I remember looking at Jay's game against it.
But I mean, presumably still Erebor Reclaimed for the because it's going to be a Yellow Alliance if it's Iron Hills.
It was, what is it?
Yeah. Iron Hills is green with Army of Thrall, but yellow with this stuff. If you want to have a green alliance, it has to be Erebor Reclaimed.
Oh, okay.
It probably was Dane from Erebor Reclaimed.
Yeah, then probably.
I will quickly
was it Gandalf?
What they've listed it as. They have listed it as Iron Hills, Halls of Thranduil, Survivors of Lake Town, Historical Allies.
Yeah, so at least in then.
Yeah, at least in this version of the list that I've got.
Yeah, but because
they had illegal list.
This may not be the most up to date.
Is this a scandal?
How many
on something?
Dane is leading 17 warriors.
Oh, so it is on Hills then. Interesting. That is illegal then, because in Erebor
diggity damn.
15 models. God damn. What
DQ
is this?
the Germans. You had it here first.
Blow this thing wide open.
If Denby's not here to alienate a nation, I will do it. God damn it!
You'll do it.
So we should get another point versus Italy. I think we need to play this all over again. Results are officially void.
Yeah, Will, Champion, Ali, if you can rerun the tournament. Yeah.
Oh dear.
The run it in Cambridge.
Interesting.
What takeaways do we think kind of our viewers who probably predominantly play singles could take away from these list choices? Is there anything we're missing kind of here in the GBHL that they've brought? Or do you think a lot of the lists are specialised for teams?
I think remembering this, the first point is it's only going to be good versus evil. So you can completely eliminate a lot of lists. And with the evil meta being the way it is, so if there's lots of Dragon Emperors, there's lots of Mordor, lots of Angmar, lots of Assault and Lothlorien, you have a very good idea of the things you're going to be facing. So your good side lists can be highly tailored, or at least at the moment, where the meta is fairly stagnant for the evil side. You can highly tailor your list to, play into those things. Other than that, I guess, I mean, the evil side is kind of a personal flavor choice. I mean, these guys don't have Assault and Lothlorien, for example, but which isn't a wrong choice. It's just, that was another very popular army. I think the Dragon Emperor ended up being taken. It was in 18 out of 20 of the 4 lists, and then I think 6 of those were dummy lists. So I think it was 12 people, so still 60% more than half the teams had brought a Dragon Emperor along. just because it's so reliable. Even in good side, there isn't that much that's as reliable as it. But in evil, there's just no battle line that just ticks over that well. You know, it doesn't have courage issues. It doesn't have fight value issues. It doesn't have squishiness issues, which is all common for evil. So
I have to now add. I've just checked, and Iron Hills are a historical allies with Thranduil's Halls.
Oh, well,
so
I thought they were.
have
and Survivors of Lake Town.
No, I have to check it.
Yes. Well,
yes, they are.
I guess we don't have to rerun.
So they're absolved.
We take it all back. Right, should we look at second place?
Simply a prank to try and upset the Germans.
I'm sure our boorish behaviour during the award ceremony didn't already do that.
Nah, that's fine. They loved it, I'm sure.
So in second place was France. They took Assault on Lothlorien, Goblin Town allying in the Spider Queen, Black Riders on the evil side, and then Minas Tirith, Lothlorien, Rohan, and then Army of Lake Town with Thorin's Company rounding out their 3 good lists. What do we think of these ones, Steve?
This is the one that has like five of the Thorin's Company, wasn't it? It was like Thorin, Dane, not Dane, Thorin, was it Dwalin? Nori, Dory, and Philly maybe? I don't know.
Wasn't there Lothlorien Rohan quite unique list with all the possible Rohan heroes on foot, like Hammer and Gamling?
Yeah, so to very briefly run through the 2 lists you guys mentioned. So their Army of Lake Town Thorin's Company list was Master Alfred Braga, standard, a Lake Town captain. And then they had Thorin with pony, Dwalin with pony, Nori, Dory, Ori. So 5 dwarfs in total.
How many models?
56.
And then the Master is obviously the leader.
Yeah.
I think...
sorry.
It's interesting. I mean, you've got a lot of marches because all the dwarves can march. Nori gets +1 to wound. Did Thorin have Orcrist? The Oakenshield?
No, only a pony. Didn't even have the Oakenshield.
Interesting. Well, I guess he doesn't have to survive, really. He's just there to be a fight 6 hero. Ponies are nice for stuff like recon because you can just tar pit your enemies and then try and break through. Even though ponies don't get charge bonuses, they do still go fast and then, well, fast-ish, and you can still march with all those mounted dwarves. So, yeah.
Do the ponies still get 5 inches extra for march, I assume?
They're still cavalry. Yeah, so they get 13. Same speed as a marching Spider Queen. What's the Rohan?
So, Galadriel, some elves, and then Dernhelm, Theodred, Gamling, Hammer, and Elfhelm, and then a very small spattering of Rohan models. 34 models in total. Theodred is mounted, Dernhelm is mounted by default, but Gamling, Hammer, and Elfhelm are all on foot.
Interesting. That is interesting.
That's an interesting list, which I guess is something of anti-Dragon Emperor. Possibly every strong team brought something that was meant to dismantle Dragon Emperors.
So
those heroes with fight 6 bikes behind them are something that can definitely do this.
Yeah, because you've got Might to just make it happen, and then Gatling can give you a little top up. But does he have the banner?
So no, he doesn't.
No.
Oh.
So Le Grand Army, who we played, took a very similar list, and we paired it. I can't remember the scenario. It was whatever the first mission was. We paired it into Lords of Battle. We paired it into Assault on Lothlorien, and I think our AOL player just got bodied. I think it was a 12-0 loss. So it can pull out some, on paper, you'd probably back AOL, so it can definitely pull out some surprising wins, I think. So it's maybe a bit of a...
I have to say, if our AOL player played against it, he probably wouldn't lose 12-0.
Well, who could that be, I wonder? Well, I mean, yeah, to be fair, we Lords of Battle is a bad scenario for Assault on Lothlorien if they have that kind of might power. Right. The Goblin Town Spider Queen, that was about 70-something models, wasn't it? 78 or something like that. Did it have any mercenaries?
I will have a look for you. Bear with me. It had 78 models, Goblin King, Gollum, Grinner, Goblin Captain, Goblin Captain, Goblin Captain, Goblin Mercenary Captain with 10 mercenaries, Spider Queen, Bat Swarm, Felwarg.
Oh, it's essentially something I've played at Polish Team Championships a few years ago. You can build it with the Scribe, which is about 74 models, or with Mercenaries, which is about 78. Both of them are viable. I'd probably take the Mercenary, rather the Scribe for this event, just because of how long the game was. But it's still, it's a good list. But a lot of good armies, on the other hand, had decent numbers. So with decent numbers, those goblins can be quite easily killed.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned, Jakob, how long the games were. In your guys' experience, at least on your side, did you find games were lasting a long time, or did you find that even with the long round duration, you still weren't getting through that many turns?
Oh, yeah. For me, the games were very long. So I didn't have that many models myself. So some of the games, like the game against an Italian guy, lovely one, by the way, with Corsairs and Serpent Horde list. It was a wonderful game that made me do a lot of maneuvers in a more normal length game. It wouldn't be possible, and it made it way more interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
although in the same round, your game lasted like 5 turns, Dave. So
yeah,
different experience.
Well, Tommaso and I, between us, had 130 models, so there was a certain amount of slow thinking and just the amount of time it took to move towards the middle. But yeah, we got 5 turns in 2.5 hours, which is quite considering we didn't have any combats for the first 2 turns. That's pretty funny, I think. But
Quite
also
methodical.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think I only had one game in the weekend go. Oh no, I had 2 games end before like a natural conclusion rather than timing out, I think. Let me think about that actually. Oh no,
Defenders from Helm's Deep.
Yeah, no, that one timed out. The Lords of Battle where I tabled the Ents, that one obviously wasn't. And the Recon where I defeated the Polish player, Adam. That was our 25% of him, but we only had like 10 minutes left in that one.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Polish players, should we look at the final team, the winners of the inaugural Nations Cup, Team Poland? So
John, so you say their names incorrectly, and then I say them correctly. That's the plan.
Do you want just the first names or the full thing?
Oh, do the full thing.
So AOL was bought by Tomasz Gottfried Rokata.
Tomasz Gottfried Rochatka.
Dragon Emperor was bought by Piotr Zichu-Zich.
Piotr Zich. And the second one, by the way, is their nicknames, which are just a historical thing coming from a forum that has been used in the Polish SBG scene a long time ago.
I always wondered why the nicknames for you guys were so kind of prevalent, but that makes a lot of sense. So Mordor Serpent Horde brought by Raphael Diego.
And the last name?
Macios Zek.
Rafał Diego Macioszek.
Defenders of Helm's Deep bought by Raffle.
All right, John.
Potempa.
Okay, that's all right.
Halls and Survivors of Lake Town brought by Ajas Sokol.
Adam Ajas Sokol.
And Rohan and Lothlorien Misty Mountains brought by Macy K. Mike Rotowski.
Maciek Mike Rutkowski.
I get it.
Almost there. Almost there.
That's good.
Right.
playing against the list very similar to that in the Polish team championships last November.
So we won't spend too much time on this slide because we're going to go into these lists in a bit more detail. But before we do that, let's look at some stats about what actually made the podium. So this shows individual factions. So obviously there was a lot of alliances we saw, but all 3 teams in the podium, they all took at least a flavour of Lake Town. 2 took Survivors, 1 took Army. All 3 teams had Lothlorien on the good side. 2 out of 3 had Misty Mountains. That's just Gwahir dropped in. Both of those lists were importantly the same. I think it was Misty Mountains, Lothlorien, Rohan. So very similar lists. 2 teams had Mordor. The 3rd team had Black Riders. So that's 3 Witch Kings, a Witch King every team. 2 had Rohan, 2 had AOL, 2 had the Spider Queen, 2 had Defenders, 2 had Dragon Emperor, and 2 had Thranduil's Halls. And then a smattering of armies showing up once, but quite a lot of heterogeneity, it'd be homogeneity, wouldn't it? Amongst kind of the lists that are showing up. So 2 out of 3 taking AOL, 2 out of 3 taking Emperor. And
yeah, I mean, the evil side, that's not surprising to me at all. But what does surprise me is actually that although if I'd thought more about it, it wouldn't be so surprising. But Lake Town being so popular is definitely I think a slightly different thing on the continent compared to in GBHL. We don't seem to see Lake Town isn't as popular since they nerfed outside of small points. People haven't been searching for ways to play Lake Town, which maybe is a mistake. I mean, clearly it's a good army, has play.
Do you think there's
Lothlorien doesn't surprise me? Lothlorien does not surprise me because Galadriel leading 18 elves, which would give you the fight 6 guys with the pikes and sentinels. It's just such an obvious piece to include in a team tournament because it's another blinding light, it's another compel, it's another all that stuff. You know, it's good value.
Jakob, you might have an interesting view. Do you think there's a reason why we don't see kind of the sort of Battle of 5 armies type? They could be either just Halls of Thranduil, just and Survivors, or with the Erebor, with the Iron Hills. We see that less often in the UK compared to Europe.
To be fair, I don't know. Although I agree, I always felt like alliances, especially alliances of more than 2 lists, or 2 army lists, are something that GBHL somehow doesn't like particularly. And I think here we've seen some of those. Like one of the Misty Mountains list was actually the one with High Elves and Shire, which is definitely not something. Or not High Elves, but Lothlorien, I believe, and Shire. Yeah, with the pikes, which we don't see much in the UK. Although they've brought something similar with Boromir added to the Gates of Gondolin recently.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, meta is a bit different, definitely.
It's interesting because back in the day, people used to be very sort of uptight about alliances, but even though it's less so now, people still they just default to green alliances. They default to 2-part alliances, or they default to pure lists or legendary legions so much when building lists. I think it's quite interesting. You're definitely correct that is a sort of a British hang up for whatever reason.
I am proud of my records of, I believe it's a record of podiuming in GBHL 100 with 6-way Yellow Alliance last year. That was
you did it with a 5-way where you won at
so I won with 4-way, although it could have been 5-way Yellow Alliance easily. I just took a slight advantage in Meltherm over memes.
Right, so you had Aragorn from the Fellowship as well, did you?
Yes, but it was mostly not even for in-game advantage, but because I'm a huge Boromir fan, I wanted Boromir to lead a warband with Aragorn, and that's what I did.
Yeah.
Right, well, shall we have a look at the Polish lists?
All right, let's look at them.
Yeah. That's just the Polish players. That's still the Polish players. Congratulations to Piotr. Hopefully he's home safe by now. He wanted to let me know and let everyone listening know about how much he enjoyed playing all of his opponents, how much the Polish team enjoyed playing their opponents, even playing England. But Piotr specifically said, and this is a quote, from our point of view, cool game that was, and that win pushed us to victory. Morale was high after that game. So trouncing you guys, Dave, was
clearly we didn't give them hard enough time. Well, next time, Piotr, next time.
We were so close. And then everything fell apart for Jay on the final turn. We weren't going to win the round, but we
were so close to draw, which is sad.
Would have helped us in the game, though. That loss knocked us down and made us play Italy, which then knocked us even further down.
But definitely well done. Well done to Team Poland.
Absolutely.
I've also brought my Polish t-shirt from last year. Put it on here because I'm obviously all for the winning teams.
I was happy to get some revenge on Adam for spanking me at last year's World Team Championships at Contest of Champions with his Glorfindel. So I got revenge at Recon. 12-0 for a 12-0.
So the first list we're going to look at from the winning Polish team is Halls of Thranduil Survivors of Lake Town. 45 models. You've got Thranduil, King of the Woodland Realm, with extra sword, heavy armor, and his fancy crown, leading 5 Mirkwood Elves with shield, 5 Elves with bow, 4 Palace Guard with shield, 2 Mirkwood Cav with shield, 1 Wood Elf Sentinel, 1 Palace Guard with shield, spear, and banner. Then you've got Gandalf the Grey on horse, leading 8 Lake Town Militia, shield and spear, 4 Militia, spear and bow, 3 Lake Town Militia with spear, and then Lake Town Militia Captain, leading 5 Militia with shield and 4 with spear and bow. What do we think of this one, team?
It's a nice list. 45 models is solid. It's obviously fairly soft, but you can keep the Lake Town pretty safe, I think, behind the front line. Thranduil can do a lot of work, and if you flank him with, the Mirkwood Elves, you can get the fight 6 from the Palace Guard. You got a bodyguard from them as well. It just does a lot of damage. +1 to wound is really good there. Gandalf can keep Thranduil safe potentially if he wants to use protection with the Valor on him in a pinch, and or just Compel is great. Blinding Light is useful. Sorcerer's Blast is good. There's a lot.
It's interesting seeing the elves as the front line, because you often, at least what I've seen, when we see Lothlorien sprinkled in, or the kind of anytime you take dwarfs, the elves are normally in the back line. But here they're kind of your heavy hitters.
Yeah, I'm surprised. And for example, in Palace Guard, why some of them at least don't have spears. It would bring some more flexibility. But knowing Adam, this is his typical list, at least when he plays good. With Gandalf the Grey, especially, it's a model that's not considered very good, but especially in 2.5 hour game, maybe, just maybe, he can do something, and he can definitely give Thranduil so enough will to be able to tank some Sapwills and keep this Aura of Dismay going, which helps this list a lot.
Our next list is Rohan and Lothlorien Misty Mountains. Flappy Bird, Gwahir himself, is the leader. Then Theodred with horse and shield, 12 Royal Guard, 2 Royal Guard on horse, 1 Royal Guard with banner. And then Galadriel leading 10 Guard of the Galadriel Court, 4 Galadriel Warriors with spear and bow, 2 Galadriel Warriors with spear and shield, and 2 Wood Elf Sentinels. What do you think of this one? Wheels are turning.
Okay.
Before the experts speak, I really like
start.
The look of this. Oh yeah, you take away.
Yeah. No, you can go. You started.
So I like this list quite a lot. You've got 2 kind of combat threats. One of them with who can kind of reach out and attack anywhere. The other's kind of a bit more reliable troop killer with the extra attacks on the charge, reroll wounds. Royal Guard are fearless. They're decent defense 6. They're not too expensive. I guess kind of 10 points a model isn't really unreasonable, and Royal Guard on horse, pretty good value. And then you've got an incredible amount of fight 6. So this list, I don't know how good it would be in kind of a normal tournament, but my first impression is that they've built this and tuned it to really beat up the Dragon Emperor.
So this list here, I wouldn't say so, because this list in Mike's hands predates Dragon Emperor by quite a bit. It's also something he's been taking to a lot of team events. I've been playing a lot, and it's a list that potentially might not be great for a singles event, but when you can prevent it fighting something like Hunter Orcs, like a lot of models with a lot of attacks, strength 4, it can be really good. It's not a list that kills very quickly. It's a list that just uses Galadriel, Warrior, kill off the heroes, while Royal Guard supported by Pike's tank, and very slowly grind through the opponent, which again 2.5 hours help in that.
I guess
in the hands of amazing player that Mike is. I believe it won all the games, so it's a very good result.
It strikes me as a fairly similar list in design to the Erebor Lothlorien lists that both England and the Lions took. Kind of, it wants to achieve the same kind of thing, just using slightly different heroes and slightly different models to do so.
Yes,
is that accurate?
Yes, exactly. Although it has here a bit less staying power, at least less, a bit less killing power, but it has Gwaiher, who can win games by himself.
Which one of those two lists do you think is more applicable for singles?
I would say if it's 2.5 hours, it would be the Erebor Reclaimed. If it's say 2 hours, then I would pick this one.
Cool. Sorry, just to double check, can you guys hear me now again?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Sorry about that, my internet crapped out. I would say that I noticed this. I played against Mike at the Polish Team Championships using basically this list, but he had Theoden instead of Theodred. I assume that's because they wanted to take Defenders of Helm's Deep, and Theoden was spoken for.
Yes, and then Theoden gives this list March, which I guess they assume that with 2.5 hours they don't really need March that much.
Well, it's an acceptable substitute for sure.
So the third and final good list, as alluded to, is Defenders of Helm's Deep. You have Theoden, King of Rohan, heavy armor and shield, 15 Royal Guard with throwing spear, Leggy leading 12 Galathrym with elf bow and spear, Gamling with the big flag leading 9 warriors of Rohan with throwing spear, and finally he's got Haldir with elf bow, heavy armor leading Aldor, the Rohan archer. 41 models, 15 bows, 24 throwing spears. That's certainly a lot of shooting. We saw this
good build for this because it's got
Sorry, Dave, you go.
Shots we can't have outdoor.
We saw an awful lot of the teams bringing kind of a good gun line, as in good side. A lot of teams had Helm's Deep with either kind of throwing spear spam or bow spam. We saw a lot of Minas Tirith builds with bolt throwers, but it definitely seems like you wanted a dominant shooting army in your good lineup.
This list, it's actually a very smart, very interesting pick, Defenders of Helm's Deep, because they correctly assume that a lot of teams are going to bring both AOL and Dragon Emperor, and this list can do well against both of those. It can use its throwing spears to just swipe those petty goblins and orcs out of the board. And into Dragon Emperor, it's a lot of defense 6, a lot of shooting. It can certainly do its work. It has a banner that gives free might. The typical disadvantage of lower mobility, lack of cavalry models is not as important with very long games. So yeah, that's a very interesting choice. And also it's a very heavy shooting list, and similar way of thinking that we took with Rangers of Ithilien, which we didn't bring in the end, that the evil can only have one Shadow Lord, and this can do well against other things. Even lists like Isengard crossbow spam, which
this would do
eventually
better than
yes, definitely, because it outranges those crossbows, and it has 17 elven shots with strength 3, so it can do a lot of damage to crossbows.
Right, let's have a look at the evil side from the polls. They first up have Assault on Lothlorien. Dave, you're the expert. Do you want to run us through this one?
I'd love to, except I can't see it, so I'm afraid you'll have to do it.
I'm always trying to get out of work. So the Polish Assault on Lothlorien build is 62 models. MESBG leads 13 orcs with shield, 1 orc with a banner, 1 wild rider with shield and throwing spears. Druzag the Beast Caller leading 2 bat swarms, 2 giant spiders, 11 goblin warriors with bow and spear, Wild Chieftain with 3 wargs, Goblin Shaman with 8 goblins with spear and bow, 4 goblins with spear, and then an orc shaman with 10 orcs with shield, 1 orc with spear, 1 warg rider with shield and throwing spears. So a lot of the AOL lists are all pretty similar, but the key takeaways from this one is they have the Wild Chieftain, and interestingly, their front line is orcs rather than their back line, which is probably what I've seen more typically. Piotr did tell me that kind of on reflection, they do wish that they had fitted in the Captain on Warg somehow into this list, which I think is a more similar build to what England won to.
So the main thing with this is the Wild Chieftain, and they don't have either of the captains, so the Goblin Captain or the Orc Captain, which means your warband spots become very limited. And when you want to have bat swarms, giant spiders in the Goblin side are forced to be in Druzag's warband because you can't have them anywhere else other than Ashrek. I guess the reasoning is March is not that important for this list in most scenarios, because in Recon you can just outflank and run away with your big scary stuff, and the Wild Chieftain can march actually, so you can run off with him and the Wargs if you need to. I think I liked the fact that I didn't pay any double. Pretty much none of my warriors had 2 pieces of equipment, whereas this has got the spear bow goblins. It also has no prowlers, which I like prowlers in this list. But it also,
what's the reasoning for wanting to avoid 2 pieces of equipment?
It gets you more models. It means I could have the 6th hero. I don't have any hero that's on the level of reliability as an enraged Wild Chieftain, of course, but an Orc Captain on Warg provides something also unique that other things don't, which it can get the +1 to wound if you throw a bat swarm in as well. Anytime it outnumbers the Captain on Warg, piercing striking, he becomes 6 attacks with, if you get to knock them down, 6 strikes plus strength 5 with +1 to wound. It's very destructive. That's how I killed Adam's Thranduil.
Interesting. So I think it sounds like if they had a redo, they would move away from the Chieftain and back into the Orc Captain. So take account of that moving forward if you're going to shamelessly net list this like I would do. Dragon Emperor. There's always a Dragon Emperor. They've gone for Dragon Emperor of Rune, 16 Eastling warriors, Pike Shield Black Dragon upgrade for free, of course. 1 Black Dragon Cataphract and 1 Black Dragon Cataphract with the drum. Ratabi leads 5 Easterling Warriors with Pike and Shield, 2 Easterling Warriors with Shield. Brogir leads 8 Easterlings with Shield, 2 with Bow, 2 Dragon Cult Acolytes. And finally, they have a mounted Easterling Captain. So they've gone for kind of the standard 3 named characters and the Captain, 41 models. I think this is probably the most standard Dragon Emperor build that you can get. The kind of slightly spicier varieties go drop the Captain for a bit more horde, or they drop either Rutabi or Brogir for kind of some more Dragon Knights to pump up the kind of Black Dragon numbers.
Yeah, this is just a Dragon Emperor list, and not much can be said about it. I personally prefer to go a bit more hordy, especially after.
Do you prefer the no Captain horde?
Yes, just those 3 heroes. They have enough mobility on its own, and especially here when we've seen good lists being around 40 models, it's actually makes a bit of difference if you have 41 or 46. It's very nice to outnumber still, and this Captain was not that reliable of a combat hero, as can be potentially in some scenarios a bit of a liability, as he's the one who can be wounded easiest in things like Fog of War. But it's still a Dragon Emperor list, and why even though it was nerfed, even though there were some counters to Dragon Emperor, still they did decently, although probably not as good as it would have otherwise.
Yeah.
Cool. Right, let's look at the final list. It is Barndor, Mordor Serpent Horde, for those not down with the kids and understanding the new lingo. It's 46 models led by the Witch King of Angmar on Fellbeast, Crown of Morgul, 3 Might, 15 Will, 3 Fate, leading 6 Black Numenorians, 6 Morons with Shield and Spear, 5 Trackers, 1 Wild Rider with Shield, then a Tesco Wraith with 2 Might, 9 Will, 1 Fate, leading 6 Black Nuns, 4 more Morons with Shield and Spear, 2 Orc Warriors with Shield and Spear. You got Gorbag with a Shield, leading 2 Black Nuns, 3 Orc Warriors with Shield and Spear, 3 more Trackers, Wild Rider with Shield and Throwing Spear, and then everybody's favourite undercosted banner, Suladana Serpent Lord, of course, on Armoured Horse, leading 2 Haradrim Warrior with bows with poison arrows, shout out Stephen, and Spear, and 1 Serpent Rider. What do we think of this?
Spear. That should be War Spear. Oh no, it's a warrior. Sorry, Warrior. No, I thought I read that as Raider. Ignore me. So this is a very standard, with the exception of the Fellbeast, in my opinion. So rather than having the Shadow Lord, they've gone for a regular Ring Wraith, and I guess that makes sense because you don't need this list to be anti-shooting in the team format. You've got the big numbers. You want to have more tools. You want the longer range black darts, and you can avoid the shooting lists by draft as opposed to.
Interestingly, Dave, I was hoping that you would take the opposite approach and speak about how much the Shadow Lord would be needed, because Piotr said the other change they would make to their list is to try and add the Shadow Lord into this.
Well,
to give it that shooting protection.
As we know, this list, I mean, realistically, you can run this with the Shadow Lord. You just have to drop some models. I mean, when I played 40 models, I used the Witch King on horse and the Shadow Lord on horse, and then I used Shagrat. So Shagrat down to Gorbag is quite a large point save. So you could take that exact list, drop Shagrat to Gorbag, and then pump up the Witch King with 2 Will, and the Fellbeast upgrade would be the exact same list would work there.
You could also drop the Fellbeast, and then that gives you enough points to get the Shadow Lord on foot.
I think this list wants to have the Fellbeast in it. It needs something creative, especially if you only have Gorbag and not Shagrat. It's not as dependable of a battle line, but for this kind of tournament, the Fellbeast gives you the tools you want, I think. And it doesn't really any downsides.
Yes, and Shagrat, if Shagrat is known to only be playing against good that knows that there's a lot of Dragon Emperors, it might be often frustrating how much Shagred has to go into fight 5 or worse yet, fight 6, where he just can end up bouncing off. As we've had this kind of experience in our last game with Dave in City of Kings, when Shagred quite comically just bounced off the Rivendell Knight for 2 turns and just did nothing really all game.
That's good stuff.
Do you think the Fell Beast has merit in singles, or do you think it's kind of specifically the conditions of Nations Cup that made it worth taking?
I do think it has merits. It's maybe people just currently Fell Beast is nowhere near as good as it used to be, but still on the Witch King it can be a really nice tool. I enjoyed using it quite a lot. But Witch King on Fell Beast just has way different role in the list than the Witch King on Horse. And in this kind of list, I would even sometimes consider making Suladan a leader and using Witch King more sparingly. But it's a big risk into good, so maybe not in this kind of format. But still, Fell Beasts are interesting, and I'm definitely more, when I'm playing against someone who has Witch King on a Fell Beast, I'm way more worried than it's the Witch King on a horse, because Witch King on a horse is just standing there and casting some spells. He can get a lot of value from them, but he can't do something huge and unexpected.
Yeah, exactly. Flying monsters just give you that X factor. Even though he's only fight 5, he still has a lot of scary things he can do.
Yeah, I love flying monsters. Right. That brings us almost to the end of our show. It is time for everybody's favourite section, the viewer comments. We start with a sad one because Duncan Peacock says, sad my GBHL 90 wasn't covered. Was looking forward to having my list dissected. Next week, maybe. Well, if you made it this far, Duncan, I'm afraid we still haven't dissected your list. If you post your list in the comments, Dave will personally dissect your list and tell you how it's terrible in every single way.
Yeah, it was probably awful and I hate it, maybe.
David Jackson asks, reckon you can get Jay Clare to do the right thing and come out of retirement for the next Nations Cup? Make England great again.
Well, he didn't make it great again the last 2 times, at least. So
yeah,
possibly it wouldn't help after semi-retirement.
So
we're
never going to get the early Arnold models now that we've bashed Jay Clare on the podcast.
Oh, I don't think he listens. Hi, Jay. I know you listen, really.
Hi, Jay. Please send us the supplement early.
I think if Jay was willing to play the kind of competitive list that we'd want to play, buy in, then yeah, I'd take him still probably. But I don't think he wants to play that way anymore, and that's completely fair enough. But it means he's not really suited to a tournament like this anymore, in my opinion.
The only JP1 says 10 out of 10 would watch again, which I can only assume was a typo and he accidentally commented on the wrong video. Masusimi says, for anyone who doesn't know, Figwit was a fan name given to one of the unnamed elves at the Council of Elrond, who was then given the role of being the elf escorting Arwen to the Havens, and later in the Hobbit trilogy became Lindir. There's some rather funny stuff in Unexpected Journey behind the scenes, with him having to do dozens of takes trying to get his long Sindar lines done, or swearing and being laughed at by Hugo Weaving.
Well, take that, Figwit. You fool.
Robert Stevens says, how about a video on silly mistakes beginners make and how to fix them? So, Jakob, please give us a rundown of all the silly mistakes I made in our game at Nations Cup and how I should fix them.
You really want to? Do you really want to go through this?
No, I'm traumatized enough. Let's not do it.
It would require a lot of knowledge about how this game went, and it's probably not going to be that meaningful for the viewers who haven't watched it.
Yeah. The short answer is get good scrub, basically.
There are certain things, but it would require some thinking about to sort of dissect. It's definitely something that we could do in a video, though.
Yeah. We'll get Dave to play a game versus Denby. Dave can pick out all of Denby's beginner mistakes.
What a beginner he is. He's been playing more than I have.
Carson Howard is updating us on his journey to becoming the next Louis Van Heck commission painter. $40 for Ugluk and Lurtz, 40 for Saruman, Greener and the Palantir, 50 for 20 Urukai Warriors, and 50 for 24 Scouts. 180 for all of that. I hate batch painting. Like to take my time on each model. So I think 40 for so $20 for a hero is pretty fair. I think $50 for kind of 24 Scouts is really, really cheap. I think $180, I don't know what that is in real money, but it doesn't sound like a lot for
150 quid-ish, I think.
A pretty big army.
Maybe slightly more.
That's a good deal.
Oh, yeah. That's not that big of an army. That's basically just...
It's quite a lot of models.
Oh, yeah, no, it's not. It's
like 50 models.
50 models, it's about $3 a model on average. Obviously, some are going to be nicer than others.
Yeah, so it's like £2 a model, basically.
Carson.
I can tell you, Carson, that if you like to be satisfied how those models look, they won't look that satisfying for this price.
But, I mean, he's offering to paint much. What Jacob means is you shouldn't put in so much effort that they look satisfying for that price. You should rush them and make them scruffy, just so your opponent's getting their money's worth.
Subscribe to my painting Patreon to find tips on how to make the models look scruffy and rushed.
And then you just bring the display board and you get best painted. No, I'm joking. Angmar was really nice.
He's making you out, John.
I'm trying so hard not to nibble. So hard.
I feel like I will never get invited to this podcast ever again.
Nah, when we need help pronouncing names, Jakob, we'll get you on again.
Yeah,
what's the general advice for dividing troops amongst warbands? Some seem to put all their archers and cav in specific bands. Some seem to divide them equally. I've heard Dave talk about divide and conquer. Is Maelstrom also a factor in this?
Yeah, I think Maelstrom is honestly it's a bigger factor because it's more likely to come up in a game. But also Maelstrom is so decided by other factors like your warband leader and your might distribution and whatnot. That Maelstrom is the reason why it's not fun. It's not so nice when you have to put like all of a front line in one warband and all the back line in another. So, for example, if you're having, my front line is all Rohan roll guard without throwing spear, my back line is all guards of the Glathram Court. It's annoying in Maelstrom if you can't bring them on next to each other, or at least if you have to spend all your might to bring them on next to each other, because each individual part of the warband doesn't really work without the other part. It's the same with Cirith Ungol or Ugluk scouts or something. If you want to have your scouts in your Urukai in front of your orcs, you need to have them come on together. But when I talk about for divide and conquer, I like to follow the philosophy of I like to prioritize making the bulk of my fighting force should be with my strongest fighter, which is usually the leader, but not always, and a captain with march or something. You want to make a big chunk that can march straight to the middle, and then you have your sort of maybe a wizard or a Legolas or a Spider Queen or a whatever on the other side with some cavalry and a few archers. If you can set up your warband so that they work like that for divide and conquer, I have had a lot of good results with that, because divide and conquer tends to have one or two corners that work way better than the other side. So you can really maximize your deployment that way. That's how I like to look at it anyway.
Yeah, well, I have to agree. This is more important in divide and conquer than Maelstrom, because in Maelstrom, if you have one of your warbands, as Dave gave an example of Royal Guard and Guards of the Galadrim Court, if you spend as much might as you need and you make it happen, essentially, while if you just have those two warbands and it's divide and conquer, then suddenly you're just left with two halves of an army that don't function.
Yeah. Precisely. So you have to bring it into some sort of contention, some sort of
That's why something like Guayhir as a third warband is ideal, because then you essentially get your whole army in one corner, and then a very fast mobile model that's Guayhir just flies back there.
It's a bit of a cop-out answer, but I think as long as you're thinking about it and you're aware of it when you're building your list, there's probably no correct answer. There's no instantly correct answer. Sometimes it's right to put everything in one. Sometimes it's right to mix and match.
And most of the time, it doesn't make much of a difference.
No, exactly. I just try and imagine which warband you're going to start. If you're playing a 3 warband army, you have to have one of your warbands by itself. And generally, I think it's best to make that warband as small as possible and or as full of archers as possible, so it can still function without the rest of your army. It's not that important, but as Jakob says, you can't mitigate divide and conquer deployment in any way. It has to happen that way. So, whereas in Maelstrom, you can always spend might if you have to, even though sometimes you'll get screwed anyway. There's always some mitigating factor available to you. So, unless you're running a might army,
well, definitely for Maelstrom, if you have more heroes and you have more choice, for example, you have Denethor, who might want to have fewer troops in his warband and maximize the warbands that actually heroes have might and can impact where they're going.
Yeah, which can be a little counterintuitive.
Our final comment from this video is from Thomas Denny, who lets us know that Frodo is great. Who is that? Which is, of course, the acronym that turns into Figwit, the original fan name for Linda. Our next set of comments are from Stephen's fantastic initial travel blog video that he posted. Hopefully there'll be more coming up, but we did all get pretty in the zone for gaming, and I think that might have slipped by the wayside. Matt King says, best any hero. Oh, yes, Dave? No, Dave?
No, I was just laughing, and I'm lagging a bit.
So, Matt King says, best any heroic so far. Would you Les Hustle again as the designated driver, Dave? Would you?
Pardon?
Would you Les Huttle again?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd rather drive your car the whole way. When I got back in my car, it felt very rickety, and I was like, was it always this noisy and this hot and uncomfortable? Damn, I got a taste of the good life, and I don't want to go back.
Well, I'm not going to make any more stupid who does better at a GBHL 100 bets, so I'll keep holding my car.
Oh.
I've learned my lesson.
It didn't have €4 for my beer, so you can't make any bets because we all know you're just if you lose,
just a hobbyist.
Oh. Maybe you should take those $180 for painting.
C-Can says, love this. Free Run DJS says, the way you shot this made it look like the steering wheel in the car swapped sides when you got into Belgium. Love the vid, gents. Really sad I can't make it to Antwerp this year. Dirk, I want to meet you in real life, not in a weird way. Hopefully we'll meet at a tournament sometime. Come to Ardacon.
The steering wheel did swap sides. That's what happens when you go from England to the continent. All our cars do that. Don't worry about it. It's just
Kakan does confirm that there are literally tens of us, referring, of course, to the tens and tens of any Heroics fans out there. Let us know that you're there by liking the video. If this video gets 3 likes, Denby will come on the next episode. And our final comment is from the Golems Gamers, who say, we need to get Ali more merch. You're absolutely right. I presume this is Elliot. So therefore, we're going to give him some Any Heroics merch so he can be properly attired.
So true.
Right. So that brings us to the end of our lovely journey through the podiums of the Nations Cup. Don't worry, this isn't Mindfulness and Middle-earth again. We are, of course, sponsored and affiliated with 7th City Collectibles, the best place to buy all your second-hand models, your first-hand models, your Lorcana cards. There's nothing else you really need to buy. Just buy Lorcana.
What this even is? I have no idea.
It's the Disney card game. It's a fair and balanced game, unlike Middle-earth.
John very recently.
I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I want to have unfair advantage.
Any final shout outs, anybody?
I want to shout out Hedgeman, the Polish gaming company that provided the free dice that rolled so many sixes. I fell in love with it over the course of the weekend. Shout out. Love that dice. In fact, they managed to swipe a second one from somewhere. Hopefully they roll well.
Stephen would like to specifically shout out Paul from Team Austria, Menno from Unquendor, and Guillaume from Le Grand Army, as well as all the countless people who came up and said hi to him over the weekend. I got my first person asking for a photo. Shout out to Mark from Canada. It was because his friend likes the podcast, not because he liked it, but even so, I'm pretty certain it was the Canadian chat that sent you the tournament results, Dave, is Mark's friend.
Oh, wonderful.
Was it Justin?
Lovely.
Oh, we've lost Dave. Maybe it was Justin. Let us know in the comments if you're called Justin. And that is everything. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share.